So my Civic here has never had AC the entire time I've owned it, and on today's video, I'm gonna go ahead and start the process of reinstalling it back into the little hatchback. My AC has always been to just roll down my window. And as you can imagine, that has not been ideal. Especially in the summer here in Cali, it gets pretty hot. I imagine the previous owner removed it for, more power, but I know my Civic here is pretty slow, and I'd rather be cool and slow. Now, I've been slowly gathering the parts needed to install the AC back in here over the past couple weeks, and the evaporator was one of the things that I didn't really need to worry about because I already had one installed. However, I did want to replace the expansion valve because it came included in the AC service kit that I bought, and I figured I might as well. This leads me to today's video because I'm going to be installing an evaporator that's not meant for this car, but can fit, and it allows me to install a cabin air filter into the little hatchback. And for those of you who don't know, this generation Civic never actually came with a cabin air filter, and the air filter basically filters the air, obviously, in your cabin, and it also protects your evaporator here from any debris damaging it. This does not belong in there. It's like a rat's nest in there, what the? And it's pretty standard in modern cars nowadays, and I always wondered why it never came with one. Now, I did some research on the Honda forums, and it turns out that there is a way to actually install a cabin air filter into these generation Civics. And since I was gonna be removing the evaporator to install the expansion valve, I figured I'd give it a shot. Now, at this point, I probably should mention, I'm not a professional, so I don't know if this will actually work, and dealing with the refrigerant is always an issue that you probably should get done professionally, or at least be safe about it. I don't really know exactly too much how to deal with it because obviously I don't have AC and I don't have refrigerant to worry about, but just be careful. Now, I went to the junkyard and started mixing and matching parts from various cars, trying to find if this was actually possible, and I came up with two viable options that obviously the forums alluded to. I found a 2000 Honda Civic and a 97 Honda CR-V. I believe the year was right, I'm not entirely sure. But both of those cars had housings that were very similar and were about the right size as the 5th gen Honda. Okay, so this one here is from a CR-V. This is the EG hatch one in here, and this is from a EK Civic. Both of these are from a 2000 model. They look pretty similar. Obviously, the only difference is these have a cabin air filter and the EG hatch does not. I'm kind of assuming and hoping that they are the same. After I finished comparing them right side by side, I threw them all into the hatchback to see if they would all fit, and I test fitted them both, and the fitment seemed to be pretty accurate. So other than one had a temperature sensor in a different location than, well, actually all three of them had different locations, but they have mounting points for you to move them, and it really wasn't a big issue. The other thing was my generation Civic has one extra bolt than the other ones do, which also not a big issue. At least not an issue for me, really. One thing I didn't get a chance to check was the inlet and outlet ports for the hoses that attach on the firewall, just because my generation Civic, at least the one I was testing there, didn't have any hoses to compare against. I don't have the lines here. There are no lines, so I can't really tell. Now, I ended up buying the 6th generation housing unit from the Honda Civic instead of the CR-V, just because it was from a Civic. And other than the location of this temperature sensor, I believe, but honestly, I couldn't tell a difference between either one of them. They both fit in fine. Now, in order to expose and remove my evaporator here, I have to remove the glove box that was just located here, and it's just 2 bolts right at the bottom. And I also had to remove this bracket here that just goes along to it and basically fastens the glove box to the dash. Yeah, it was a little uncooperative, but there are no other bolts, you guys can see. It just comes right off. Then I could access my evaporator housing unit. Okay, next up is the screws. And like I said, I've spent a couple hours at the junkyard removing a bunch of these, and you can definitely do it without removing the dashboard here. It's just a little difficult when you get to the top bolt up there. There's one kind of hidden back there that you will definitely need an extension cord. An extension socket. And obviously, if you have lines connected on the other side, inside the engine bay, you're gonna have to remove those too. But other than that, it's just the sensor here, and it should just come right out. Also, keep in mind, if you're wiggling it out and you have refrigerant inside of it, you're gonna wanna put like a towel or something in there just to make sure you don't damage anything. I don't know if there is any. I don't think I'll damage anything, but I got my trusty carpet mat here, so I'm not doing that. This one is not installed. And then time for the extension. As you guys can see, it's way back there. And this extension should reach it. I hope so. Yeah, the other models didn't have my little bracket there, but it is definitely reachable. Yeah, I had issue with this before. It didn't come off before. The nut kind of gets not stuck at the end. It'll just keep rotating because it's completely loose, and it'll just keep spinning on the end, but just yank it a little bit and it should come off. And that's it. That's all the bolts. Obviously I've got no lines hooked up inside the engine base, so it should just pop right out. Hold on. I missed the bolt. Where is it at? Where is it at? There it is. Idiot. Now it comes out. Now, because I'm going to be replacing the entire housing unit and the evaporator core, I didn't really need this anymore, so I could just toss it. However, I still needed to find out where the O-rings went and how the valve was mounted, so I had to open it up to find out. And to open it up, it's just a few screws located here in the middle and clamps. And also keep in mind, to open it, you will need to basically destroy this insulation tape, and it then just opens up like an Easter egg. So just keep in mind that the insulation tape here around the edges might need to be replaced if you tear it up too bad. I bought some just in case. After examining the evaporator core, and once I was comfortable enough figuring out exactly how to mount it, I went ahead and I installed mine. Now at this point, once I got the expansion valve mounted, the O-rings installed, and the expansion valve tightened up, and the bulb wrapped in insulation tape, I was ready to install it into the housing unit here. And that's when I ran into a big problem. The freaking evaporator core that I bought brand new, mind you, the only part that I bought brand new, didn't fit into this freaking thing. Look at this. I removed the little foam thing. This side fits in there, that little slot there. Where's the light? But over there, it does not. And this does not. Look at that. How is that an OEM replacement fit? What the? The evaporator core basically had an issue with the fitment of this thing here. See, this is supposed to fit right into the slot between these hose and that hose over there. However, the little corners kept it from sitting flush on the end here and actually sitting down, and they wouldn't mount properly here. And the hoses are flexible, so you could pull them and yank them, and they move a little bit. However, because it was at the base that I had an issue, I didn't feel comfortable pushing apart the base because I felt like I might break it. To be honest though, that still didn't keep me from trying. You know, I kept pulling it apart, trying to get it to fit in here, tried all kinds of different things, and I still couldn't get it to fit. And it's not like I could just take a Dremel to this piece here, because here at the bottom, it's a slot, right? So I'm just basically cutting a hole here on both ends and just exposing it, and all the air would just like rush out. You know, all the cold air would be going to the feet and not through it. I suspect the issue was from the way they made it. It was just a few centimeters off from being able to sit flush. I got one side to sit, but the other side was raised up, but it's just the way they made it. I guess they didn't get the fitment correct, or I don't know, but it didn't fit. I had to return it. So this leads us to today. After another trip to the junkyard, and I'm back at the junkyard trying to find that specific OEM evaporator core from a 2000 Honda Civic EX and R134A refrigerant. I finally found one that would fit. I think. I haven't tested it yet. See, it's supposed to fit flush. Just enough room for the filter to slide right through there. Whereas the new one, I should say, sat kind of like this at an angle. All that's left to do now is I have to clean this. I have to remove the refrigerant oil that's in here because I have my own to add on and I don't know how much is in there. And I'm also going to be replacing the expansion valve on this one. I went ahead and I cleaned the fins inside here. As you can see, they're a little bit easier to see through. It was really dirty before, but I basically just took my air compressor and blasted air through it. I imagine you could probably do the same with a can of compressed air you could buy probably, you know, to clean keyboards and stuff. probably be a lot easier because I think shaking it is also an option. Look, there's still some in there. No matter how much air I blast through it, there's still more gunk in there. And once I've let all the refrigerant oil drain out, I can go ahead and remove the expansion valve. We're just gonna let that drain for a minute. I've loosened the bolts. It's not cooperating here. Come on. There we go. And here it is. Not that difficult, really. Just take a couple crescent wrenches to these fittings here, and the O-rings go on these two outlets, and then one O-ring goes onto this little bulb here. And then the main bulb here has a little slot on this pipe, and just cover it up with insulation, and we are done. Now, after all that, I can finally install it into the housing here, and we can call it a day. This way? Yes. Oh no, just kidding. Also, the sensor here, this brown one, is from the 2000 Honda Civic, and I'll be using my EG Hatches one just because it's a little bit longer. You can actually mount it where it belongs, whereas this one is very short. So with the sensor mounted, I double checked the fitment. Boom, check it out. Now we just gotta throw it in there. Well, I gotta close it shut first, and then we can throw it in to the little hatchback. Obviously this is not the filter I'm using, but you guys be surprised. This is a rare find. I couldn't find it online. Turns out the Honda CR-V one is the one you want. They are identical to the Honda Civic EX, and that is useless. Don't throw this though. This is important. This is not included in the air filter. Okay guys, problem number 2. You're gonna need one of these. Just a magnet to actually bolt on that one nut that's in the back. With this one, you go up here and then through it, and then you can put it on there. So it's a 1/4 inch extension because the airbag is in the way. I can reach it. It's in there now. And this little filter gave me a little bit of a hassle, but I figured it out. Basically, you kind of just have to slice open the little slots because they are supposed to slide into, let me show you guys. It's supposed to slide into these little grooves in there, but from the factory or whenever they made them, they kind of glued these shut. So I just took a razor blade to it and opened it up. And there you have it, guys. Air filter installed. You kind of have to go like this and throw it in there. Done. So to recap, everything bolts right in. I just removed the old evaporator and housing unit and replaced it with a whole new evaporator and housing unit from a 2000 Honda Civic EX. The Honda CR-V would have also fit, although the sensors would have been different. I mean, even this one had a different sensor. I didn't use the stock one, so it doesn't really matter. It'll definitely still fit. I recommend you take the housing and the evaporator from the same unit and don't do what I did because I bought a new one that didn't fit. I do want to mention that the evaporator does require refrigerant oil when you remove it and replace it. Obviously, each car is different, but I do know that if you, let's say, had an entire system already installed and you just wanted to replace this part, your manual does have the amount of oil that this part does need. Like if you were going to replace the evaporator, the condenser, the compressor, or the dryer, each one of these have different amounts of oil that they are required to have when you reinstall them. However, since I'm going to reinstall everything, I'm basically just going to put all the oil in my compressor, and by the end, it should recirculate through the entire system. Whether or not this actually works, you're going to have to stay tuned for the next episode because I'm tired. I'm calling it. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. Take care and good speed.